Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about my Scorpion SA-680 ham radio antenna. Welcome back and thanks for being here. I'm going to get a little nerdy on you and talk about more ham radio stuff. I had hinted in previous videos that I was working on a ham radio project, an antenna project. I don't know if I said antenna or not, but it was in my Yakima roof rack video. I'll link that up here. And I put that roof rack up there almost solely for the purpose of mounting this antenna. I got the antenna up there, did some testing with it, and I just could not get it to tune to all the bands. I could get it to tune on most of them, but it would not tune, especially on the 20-meter band. It just wouldn't even come close. The 20-meter band is, to lose it is a huge loss for me, so I just wasn't willing to sacrifice that. And I think I might have been able to get it to work if I had taken on some more aggressive bonding techniques, but I just wasn't willing to scrape the paint and do the permanent alterations to the car that you got to do to make it work. I am a Volkswagen enthusiast first, then stereo, music, computers, other things, and ham radio is down here. So I wasn't willing to maximize the installation in order to make it as effective as possible on ham radio when I have other things that I'm more enthusiastic about. Center of the roof is the most efficient place to mount an antenna. There are other places that are less efficient, and then perhaps at the bottom a hitch mount is perhaps the least efficient place to mount an antenna, but it turns out is the most convenient for me. Installation is very quick and easy. When I was dealing with it on the roof, my practice when I install a roof rack is wash the car, dry the car, clean the foot pads on the rack, install the rack, then put the base plate on for the antenna, then mount the antenna, which usually means I need to get a stool so I can stand on it and get up high enough to get it up there. The antenna weighs about 18 pounds, and that's not terribly heavy for lifting overhead, but because I had to stretch over so much, there was always that slight risk of something slipping, maybe damaging some paint on top of the car. And so this location back here is way faster, way easier. I have 3 different ball mounts that I use. I have a ball mount that I use for the baby trailer. It does not lift very high. It does not have a lot of lift to it because the baby trailer is short. So I don't need it to lift a lot. And then I have this one for the cargo trailer, which has more rise to it because it's a taller trailer. The tongue sits up a little higher. And so I basically have a duplicate of this high rise, so to speak, ball mount that I use for the antenna, but it has a longer shank. And by the way, all of my shanks are hollow. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a threaded piece in here. This is an anti-rattle device, and so instead of having just a standard hitch pin go through, I use a 1/2 inch bolt, and then I tighten it down and it holds the antenna in place. So to get this done, I slip in the hitch. It's a little awkward because I'm trying to stay out of the way of the camera. We'll see if I can succeed at that. And then I have my bonding strap here. Again, I'm working at awkward angles. Once that's mounted, slip the antenna into its mounting hole. Then I tighten this. I have chosen 40 pound-feet. I suspect it could go a little tighter, but it's plenty tight to make sure that the antenna does not rotate and fall out. Then I connect its grounding, its bonding strap. I forgot to do something before I mounted the antenna. Got to run the cable out. Grab that cable and bring it out. And yes, I do slam it in place. I've got lots of that cable, so I can always rebuild another one if I happen to ruin this one. It's not a big deal. I keep my coax tucked up under the bumper. I have a cap that I use to protect this coax when it's not in use. So once that's fastened, all I have to do is mount my choice of a capacity hat or the whip. And there it is, all done. I did not time that. I'll flash the actual time up here to let you know how long it really took. It's less than 10 minutes, without a doubt, probably closer to 5. The mount seats and does not wobble at all, and the antenna is very sturdy. I don't know if I just shook the whole car when I did that or not, but the antenna is not going anywhere. From there, making my connections is pretty easy. I've got a coax connection here in the back, is just out of sight of the camera, and then my antenna control line is right beside the coax mount. And so I've got 4 lines coming out of that. 2 are for it's a plus and minus contacts for the 12 volts to drive the antenna up and down. And the other 2 are for a pair of reed switches that are inside the antenna. And as the antenna rotates, the motor I should say, when it rotates to move the antenna up and down, these reed switches activate so that the antenna controller that I have inside the car can count how many revolutions the antenna motor has turned to get me in the ballpark of when I'm tuning the antenna. And then I fine-tune it either by ear or by SWR meter. The coax and antenna control line are then coiled, and I have a mixed 31 ferrite beads snapped around each of these 2 lines. So I have 2 coils back here, and that's to prevent RF energy from traveling up the control line or the coax and inside the car. It reduces interference, just to put it mildly. This box here houses the shunt coil. You might have seen some of these antennas with exposed shunt coils, and mine was for a while. I didn't see a need to box it until I started handling the antenna a lot. People who put their antennas and mount them permanently, they're not ever going to touch a shunt coil, so there's probably not a whole lot of risk in having it exposed. But I learned pretty quickly through removing and installing my antenna that, yeah, sometimes I accidentally would grab it by the shunt coil because I'm over here and I can't see it. Then I'd put my hand on it and that would dent it or bend it and warp it and whatever. And so I straightened it, and then I enclosed it in this box, and so now it's very well protected. This is a weatherproof box as well, but that's just not necessary. The shunt coil itself is weatherproof. The Scorpion SA-680, this is the Black Widow, so everything is powder coated, and then the tube here is black. Everything is black except for the whip and the capacity hat. The antenna is designed to operate between 10 meters and 80 meters. With the capacity hat, I get 12 meters to 80 meters, and so if I want to operate on 10, I remove the capacity hat and put on the whip. The clearance on the antenna with the capacity hat, I like to use the capacity hat because it's shorter. It's electrically longer, but physically shorter. And so when I have it tuned or stowed down in the 10-meter position, the clearance of the car is 8 feet 2 inches. And when I am running 80 meters, which would be the antenna extended, if I extend it all the way, then the clearance is 9 feet 8 inches. And I don't ever have to lift it that high, because with the capacity hat, I don't need to run it as high to tune in 80 meters. If I have the whip installed, the whip makes the car quite a bit taller. I want to say, oh, let's take a look here. With the whip, the clearance is 10 feet 9 inches with the antenna retracted, and 12 feet 3 inches with it extended all the way to its maximum height. And I don't ever have to extend it to the maximum height because my operating privileges don't go all the way down to 3.5 megahertz. I got to stop tuning at 3.8, and so I don't know what the height of the antenna is at that point. All I know is it's less than 12 feet 3 inches. I'm legal for operating on the road, and if I'm using the capacity hat, it's always going to be down around 9.5 feet, and so nowhere near the legal limit of operating on public roads. If I'm driving around in my neighborhood, I do try to keep the antenna down and stowed. That way I don't hit trees and stuff like that. And I can tune the antenna while I'm driving down the road. I haven't really done it yet, and if I would only do it if I was on a quiet highway or something like that. I wouldn't do it driving on a freeway or on twisty roads or anything like that. But the antenna can function while in motion, and I can work the bands while the car is moving. But if I'm not working the bands, and I do lower the antenna and put it into the 10 meter position, possibly just for better aerodynamics. As it sits in the 10 meter position, the top of the coil is approximately 4 inches higher than the roof of the car. And then of course, once I extend the antenna up and use the low bands, that clearance increases to about 22 inches above the car. And I don't imagine that's terribly unaerodynamic. What's the opposite of aerodynamic? It's probably not terrible, but I suppose it could be a risk for birds and things like that flying across my car. As far as noise goes, I can't hear any additional noise. I couldn't hear it when it was on the roof, and I certainly can't hear it back here. The capacity hat, I would have figured, would have been terribly noisy. If it is, it's way up above the roof of the car where I can't hear it, and so I don't worry about the noise so much. Performance of the antenna, all I can compare it against is my Yaesu ATAS 120 Alpha, and I recently started participating in a local 10 meter net, and I had never operated on 10 meters before, so I was really surprised at how much noise was on the band. And I'm listening for net control. Now, net control is about 15 miles from my operating position, and I could just barely make them out. So I dropped my call, and he too could just barely make me out. And then I mounted the Scorpion antenna. The Scorpion does a great job of rejecting, I would just call it adjacent noise. And then my signal in and out of net control was far better. Very clear copy. I could maybe call it a 5x5, because the first 5, of course, he's perfectly readable. I'm pretty sure I was perfectly readable. And then, the signal strength wasn't there, but it didn't matter because the Scorpion was doing such a great job of rejecting adjacent noise that I still was able to copy everything very clearly. And I'm told that the adjacent signal rejection, noise rejection, whatever you want to call it, is because of the high Q factor of the antenna. And then, of course, it's power handling. The Scorpion, the ATAS will take 120 watts, but the Scorpion will accept 1500 watts. So full legal power throughout the entire HF range. And of course, I'm not ever going to operate 1500 watts, but I could, if I wanted to, at some point in the future, toss a 500 watt amplifier in there, and that should give me one more S unit, right? And I would never go any further than that. If you're a ham, you know what HF antennas do. If you're not, you've either already checked out or your eyes are glazed over from boredom, and it's about time for me to stop. Check my ham radio video if you're interested in what else I have in this car, because this is just the antenna. All the good stuff is either in the very front of the car or under my trunk here. There's so much more to this than just the antenna. Feel free to ask questions if you have them. I didn't cover everything there is to say about this antenna because this isn't really that much of a tech channel, but I did want to share this with you Tell me what you think, and if you really want to know why I'm doing ham radio in a car, check the ham video. It talks about all of that stuff. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next time. Take care.